Hello and welcome to the elections transmission at Pitafi World. I'm your host Sana Maqbool, and of course today we're going to be taking a look at what lies ahead. The big day of course is due tomorrow, the 8th of February. The elections 2024 are happening in Pakistan, of course putting an end finally to all the different conspiracies and speculations that were made with regards to a delay in polls. And as per schedules, 8th of February is the date on which the public is going to go and cast their votes, choosing the next government setup. And this is a very important day, of course, as the nation goes to polls tomorrow. What the political parties have been preparing for quite some time now. The election campaigns, of course, ended at midnight yesterday, and that brought an end to the public rallies and gatherings that were held by different political parties. Of course, each party has been able to put forward their own manifestos, their promises to the public, many of which we have explored in our shows and are going to do so further as well, in terms of whether or not they will be achievable and who is best prepared to actually deal with the challenges of the government that lie ahead. But of course, before that, we will be taking a look at the elections tomorrow and hoping for smooth, free and fair elections as have been promised by the Election Commission of Pakistan. Of course, security concerns exist along with the attacks that happened in Balochistan today, in which unfortunately 28 people have lost their lives. And of course, this comes amid the spike in activities that we have seen with regards to KP and Balochistan in the recent days. Of course, been cited as concerns by both the provinces in terms of the elections. However, we've also, of course, seen that it has been reiterated by the security forces and the Election Commission that all security measures have been put in place to protect the public from any untoward incident tomorrow, and all polling booths, especially with regards to sensitive locations, have been beefed up with the security. So, of course, this is something that Pakistan has dealt with previously as well and will do so again tomorrow. So, we're going to be taking a look at what that means for the public and how it's going to impact voter turnout, and also generally how much the public is interested in the elections and what sort of voter turnout we're expecting and what sort of decision making exists with regards to who it is that they're going to be voting for. So for this and of course further discussion with regards to the elections, I'm going to be of course talking to a number of guests, and of course our in-house analysts Farrukh Pitafi and Faisal both are with us in the studios, and we will also be joined online by our guests and already have been joined by Muneeb Qadir, who's a political analyst. Thank you very much, Muneeb, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And I'll start with you, Muneeb, with reference to what is going on. Of course, the big day is tomorrow, and amidst all of what we have discussed previously in terms of what is happening, what sort of political party campaigns have been going on, what sort of measures are in place for free, fair and elections, what are your expectations tomorrow from the elections, and of course in terms of the kind of concerns that we have with different political parties and the security issues in different provinces as well. How much are you expecting that people will turn up, and how important it is that they do?
So, I mean, finally we've landed here, and finally we're having elections after months and months of political wranglings and discussions. I mean, on your program, we have documented the whole series of events which have now finally led us to this day, that we are just, I mean, less than a few hours away for the elections. So that in itself is quite momentous, and there is this air of excitement, but also an air of uncertainty and insecurity. And it's because, you know, there has been a spate of violent attacks, not just on political workers or political supporters, but election candidates themselves. And just as you pointed out in your introduction, around 28 people at least have been killed in Balochistan due to the attacks and terrorist attacks which have taken place at the offices of various electoral candidates. So what that does is that it makes the voters apprehensive. It makes the voters feel a bit unsafe, and it could have a negative impact on the voter turnout. So I hope that doesn't happen, and I hope that voters still feel a sense of security, and that those who have been entrusted with ensuring the security of everyone whilst people turn out to vote and exercise their democratic right. I hope that the electoral turnout turns out to be good enough to ensure that we have a democratic government in place, whichever government gets elected. And a lot of people are going to be voting for the first time in their lives because they've attained majority in the last couple of years since the last election had taken place. So it's extremely important. The expectation is that the voter turnout should be good. Because everyone had been waiting with bated breath for this moment. And this is everyone's moment. I mean, every single person living in the country. After, the question of elections having been disputed at length and in series of cases in the law courts, to political parties trying to allege the ECP's lack of impartiality, and certain parties saying that ECP is completely neutral. I mean, after all of that tug of war between political parties which played out in the law courts, which even led to the judges disagreeing with one another, here we are finally, and I hope that people do get to safely exercise their democratic right to vote.
Absolutely. And Faisal, I want to discuss this a little further, especially in terms of the demographics that Muneeb actually pointed towards in terms of the younger population that's going to be exercising their right to vote. I want to know, given the kind of uncertainties that have been pointed out by Muneeb, what do you expect in terms of the voter turnout, in terms of people having an interest in the elections and actually participating with full swing, especially the young population, and how important it is for them in terms of how much they contribute to their own vote? Do people understand the importance of their vote?
They do, and Sana, obviously talking about the young voters, I mean, this time around, this election is going to be very unique because as it is being said that nearly 20 million voters, they are youthful voters, and they are pivotal in this election. Whether they turn up for voting on the day, I mean tomorrow, that is what is going to matter in every constituency tomorrow. And what I am seeing is, as being highlighted by many other analysts as well, and we have been doing in our show previously as well, that we are expecting that a large number of the new voters, the fresh voters who want to vote and want to show their thumb print and that they have voted, and they want to make a TikTok out of it, and they want to post it elsewhere on TikTok.
Did you celebrate your first vote?
At that time, of course,
just yesterday.
Not yesterday. Not yesterday.
No,
actually, my very first vote was for the referendum of Pervez Musharraf, General Pervez Musharraf, and I don't want to tell at this.
No, of course, yes.
Whatever I did that day,
it's
but obviously it turned out to be a different result, which I was expecting. But it is going to be pivotal. The election, whichever the party is going to get into power, they will be having a large support from the youthful voters as well. And we saw that even former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, in his last rally, the addresser he addressed, in which he's been obviously trying to impress the youthful voters. He's been even calling himself youthful, and people who were standing next to them, next to him, he's been obviously claiming that everyone is youthful, so you youthful as well, so you have to vote for us and all. So you can understand that all of the political leaders, they do understand that this is going to be pivotal for them. So to me, I think the biggest Sana, the biggest problem we faced in last 2 years is that there was a sort of a sense of uncertainty when it comes to trust deficit. Youthful people, professionals, especially the IT professionals, when they saw that there are not enough opportunities in Pakistan in the IT sector, they started getting out of the country, and they moved elsewhere to seek better jobs in different countries, in European countries, and Middle Eastern countries, and North American countries. So what I'm expecting is that whoever comes into power, they need to make sure that they have to promote that trust level. People, especially the youthful, they need to build that trust in that youthful minds, that state is here and we are here to help you out. We are here to create jobs for you so that you don't leave your country. I'm talking about nearly 2 lakh Pakistani youthful professionals. They left the country in 2 years, which is, I think the number I'm forgetting, the real number I'm forgetting, but it's a very large number that people have left. And for any country, the most important are their youth and the professional youth, so that country can progress and the country can make dollars and the economy can flourish. To me, I think this is what it is pivotal, and this aspect, all of the political parties, whoever coming into power, they need to make sure that they revive that trust.
Right, and I'm glad you talked about these things, and we'll talk about the challenges that lie ahead after the elections as well. But Farrukh, I want to know then, if we talk about this trust deficit, and if we talk about the youth looking at decision making in terms of who it is that they're going to vote for, what it is it then that they're actually looking for in these political parties? Of course, we see the new generation on social media. Gen Z has their own way of looking at things, and we barely understand how it is that they work. But in terms of what it is that they want out of their political leaders now, what are their choices dependent on, and how are political parties been able to target that?
Very simple answer: jobs.
Okay.
Right? But thanks to Faisal, I mean, he said youth so many times that I was reminded that once upon a time I was a young man as well. So my first, contrary to his Bismillah with the referendum, a redoubtable referendum, mine was in 1997. And I voted for Imran Khan, right? And one thing that I learned, because at that time PMLN had actually served the electorate, right? 4 or 5 things that I learned were amazing. One, all this talk about a last minute surge and some kind of magical show, turnout is all bogus, right?
Okay.
All this expectation of miracles on the 11th hour, they are bogus. And then thinking that youth or high turnout is going to vote one way or the other in a particular direction, that is incorrect as well. If you support a political party and I support a political party, and you mobilize your people to turn out and vote, then I will also be doing the same thing. So whatever the totality of turnout, you can split it 3 ways. Of course, PMLN seems to be riding the winds right now, so they are a little bit comfortable. We keep on hearing a lot of this talk that perhaps youth belongs to one party. I don't think that is true, because majority of country's youth does not live in the cities with whom Faisal would love to do TikTok. They live in villages, and in villages poverty has actually really hurt badly, especially because of uncertainty. There are 2 or 3 things which are good, and the first thing is tomorrow's elections. No matter what happens, given that we kept on running a parliament for more than 14 months, that was half empty, right? And the country had economic crises also. So whosoever shows up tomorrow, whatever happens on the election day, whosoever wins, we are going to have a full parliament, and then we are going to have a government that is going to take care of stuff as well. Another important thing is that when you talk about circumstances, people keep on saying that this government or whatever government now actually is returned will perhaps be there for 2 months or 2 years or 3 years. I think that we have to learn something from history. Recently we saw when PTI got government, people said that this is such a shaky coalition, it is going to collapse in 1 year. It ended up, completing almost 4 years. Then the caretaker, the other PDM government came, 13 political parties, 14 political parties, and all shaky coalition, right? Half the parliament empty. And they managed to complete their term as well. So always be sure what you're voting for, because it might actually stay for 5 years.
Right. So does a full parliament mean political stability? Do you think these elections will bring that in?
Yeah, thank you very much. Now I'm going to say something very contrarian, right? If you look at Pakistan's political cycles, you'll realize that while our constitution says that our parliament has to stay in power or stay put for 5 years, what happens is Pakistan's political cycles are cyclically, they are 3 years of length, right? What happens is that after 3 years you start having turbulence, and there is a structural reason behind that. Pakistan, of course, has known both military dictatorships, and Pakistan has known civilian dictatorships, and Pakistan has known civilian democracies, and Pakistan has known Democrats who actually thought that they were more dictators who thought that they were more democratic than Democrats. So in that situation, what happens is that focus and locus shifts to real power, the battle of gun, right? And because the country's army chiefs have a tenure of 3 years and your parliament is 5 years, when we near the 3-year term, you start facing turbulence. So what is the easiest way to solve it? Bring both closer.
Yeah.
You know, parliament 4 years, army chief 4 years, government 4 years, right? Always elections like America in leap year. And then you have a better structure that whosoever comes appoints a new army chief, and then country continues for 4 years. And then the next election, then with that new army
So
chief.
in that case, the army chief comes first, or
Because power is naked, right?
Yeah.
And the nature of power is that whosoever actually has power, and you don't have the kind of institutions that are needed there, what happens is power automatically goes to the person who has most power, physical power, right? Coercive power. So all you have to do is A, start building institutions. Secondly, also to fix this imbalance, which is structural imbalance, so that things actually come together and they continue to move in tandem.
Right, absolutely. And it's something I want to take Muneeb's opinion on as well. And given, of course, that this dynamic between different institutions have been part of the political struggle of Pakistan, I want your understanding in terms of whether or not we can actually move forward in a truly harmonious way when we talk about civil military leadership being on the same page. This is something that has been echoed by different political leaders at different points, and then of course the situation changed. So I want to understand whether or not you think that there is actually a way where this is possible, and that we are ensured that there will be no real contradiction between the two.
Very interesting, because when we talk about the civilian and military leaderships being on the same page, a lot of people within the intellectual and liberal and progressive circles view that as something having negative connotations as well. So one needs to understand that when we're talking about civilian and military leadership being on the same page, we truly mean it being in such a way which is conducive to governance framework of civilian supremacy. And at the same time, everybody, every single institution working in harmony with one another, whilst also honoring the constitutional commitments and the limitations which are placed upon their jurisdictions and the respective jurisdictions by the constitution. If that cohesion is achieved, I think that could help a lot. I mean, in Pakistan, not just achieving political stability, which has been evasive for a very long time, here and there, but also in finally getting to a point where we can also achieve economic stability. But before that, before even talking about civilian and military leaderships being on the same page or being in harmony with one another, one also needs to make sure that there is harmony among the political players as well. Because unfortunately, the previous elected government that we saw in 2018, PTI, the tone was extremely harsh and hostile towards the other political parties, towards the opposition, and the ruling government of that time, led by the PTI, was one which wasn't really very much in favor of parliamentary style of politics. They had wanted a presidential system. But now when one listens to, for example, Maryam Nawaz Sharif from PMLN, who is peddling a much more reconciliatory tone of late. She's talking about, ending the politics of hate, and even inviting PTI supporters to, join in supporting whichever government comes into power. That sounds very promising. That is something which is echoed very much by the chairman of People's Party as well, Mr. Bilal Bhutto Zardari, who's also, I think it's very significant. He's talked about overcoming religious and ethnic division and doing away with politics of hate. Now, this sort of language and that this tone is in complete contrast to the tone which was set by Imran Khan when he was leading the PTI government. So I hope that once the civilian political stakeholders are on the same page, of course, it would then be much more easier for the military leadership, for other institutions of the country to be able to support the civilian government within their constitutional duties and obligations. And I hope that tomorrow shall herald a new beginning for Pakistan. We need some healing, and not just some healing, a lot of healing, and we need to pave the way forward. I think tomorrow is an excellent opportunity for us to begin a new chapter.
Right. I know you're bursting with a question, but I just wanted to comment on what Muneeb said. Nobody actually objects to the idea, Sana, of people or institutions being on the same page.
Yeah.
Where does that book lie which has the same page, whether it lies in Pindi or it on the Constitution
That is the
Avenue? That is the
question.
question.
Maybe around Faizabad somewhere,
Yeah.
right in the middle. Yeah,
Thank
Muneeb,
you. You added another dynamic to this.
Muneeb, I've been listening to you, and obviously I've been listening to you since a long time, and it's always a pleasure listening to you, and always you becoming a pertinent part of our program. It's a blessing for us. You have highlighted an excellent aspect, and that is obviously quite near to the NRO. What I could sense from you is that if obviously PMLN takes the premier seat and becomes someone who on Constitution is able to form Constitution Avenue, is able to form the government, then they might be heading towards a fresh NRO that includes all of the political parties and at the same time all of the stakeholders of the state, so that we can forget whatever happened in the past and we can actually go towards our future with a fresh energy. Is that what you're trying to say?
Because NRO term again has a very negative connotation. It's seen as a sign of weakness, as a sign of compromise, as a sign of allowing bygones be bygones in such a way that people who have done wrong by the law are allowed to escape justice and evade justice. And that's not what I mean. I think that when the likes of Ms. Maryam Nawaz Sharif says that they want to work in a way which is conducive to democracy and not based on mudslinging or political opponents. I think, number one, she sounds very confident that it's her party which is going to come into power, albeit with, coalition with other smaller parties or independent candidates, perhaps. But she's very confident that she's going to be forming a government. And so her message to the public at large is, and even to her political opponents, that, just support us when we come into power in now carrying the country forward together. That's one meaning it could have. And the second is that, the rhetoric which had become so heated in the last 6-7 years, particularly post 2016, I think what the likes of Maryam Nawaz or Bilawal Bhutto Zardari and others mean to say is that those need to be the temperatures need to be brought down, they need to be cooled down. And there needs to be a focus on the revival of Pakistan's political, economic, social aspects. And I think that is what their focus is on. As far as theoretically, I mean, if I were to look at this, I don't find much of a problem here. I also think that it's a very good thing that if the civilian and military leaderships could be on the same page in such a way, like I said, they would both be supporting one another in cementing a stronger future for Pakistan, one which finally delivers to the electorate, to the public, the promises that they have been waiting for decades and years now.
Absolutely.
By the way, I just wanted to actually point out one thing regarding reconciliation, if you
Yes, go ahead.
give me permission.
Go ahead.
Right. I noticed that every time Maryam Nawaz is mentioned, or for that matter, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari is mentioned, it triggers PTI supporters, right? And of course, their narrative is that inheritance and this Marusi Siyasat or dynasty. I asked Maryam Nawaz in 2013 in an interview, televised interview, and I asked that you are not actually worried that people are going to view it as that. She said something incredible. She said that when my father was deposed and he was sent to exile, I was not in politics, but I was subjected to the same thing. So I'm not picking politics. Politics picked me, and they started by victimizing me, right? So this is also real. If you are today, if you are going to say that my pain is a lot and I'm suffering, then you have to be mindful what kind of pain you were inflicting upon others. And if that is NRO, then I'm sorry. Everything is bad then, right? Otherwise, basic human decency demands that we can or we find a way to work together.
Right, and Faisal, this is something that is often talked about, especially in terms of these political parties and after they come into power, is that while they, of course, are victims and there is a lot of cry about what's happening to them and they're suffering, when that changes, they are able to act in similar ways to other political parties and their opponents. And then I want to understand then, how exactly does this work with different political parties then coming to power and being the champions of a positive force, as is being said by many, even now in these election campaigns. It has been said by PM and it has been said by PPP that they'll put aside their political vendettas and they'll move forward with in a positive trajectory. I want to understand, what is the guarantee of that actually happening, given past precedents of how these dynamics change and these stances change by different parties?
Sana, we, in recent times, we saw a precedent, an excellent precedent in which, of course, we saw that PDM formed the government right after PTI's government. And the way all of the 13 parties, I mean, they were given the stakes in that government.
But wasn't that different, though?
And power, when you, in a power, in a government, when you are given the share of your power, everyone had that fair share from that cake of the government. So what we saw, that none of them at that time, they were going against each other. And as
soon as someone they were going against,
as soon as they got out of that government and went towards meeting their voters once more, suddenly we started seeing that once more they are against each other. I mean, premier example is People's Party.
Right?
No,
they are.
But
they
is
are
it not what is called politics?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So in politics, you don't have permanent enemies. You don't have permanent allies.
That's how it should be. That's how it should be.
Do you remember that day when you and I interviewed the Prime Minister, outgoing Prime Minister, and we sat here, and you said that whether they are going to get along or not. I told you that the next minute, the minute they leave power, they are going to fight.
Yeah.
And they did that.
Yeah. But that's not something we hold against them, right?
Exactly, we don't. And normally this is what happens. And I think in past even we have excellent example, Mohtarama Benazir Bhutto. I mean, when she came back to Pakistan, we know that she sat with former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and both of them, they discussed the framework, the working framework. We are going to work for people of Pakistan.
You're talking about Charter of Democracy.
Yeah.
It wasn't done here. It was done there in exile.
But
In
Faisal,
exile.
that's also something prior to elections. I'm talking about somebody who's in power, and there's a government in place, there's an opposition in place, there are different political leaders, part of the parliament. Is that a point where they can also sit together and discuss the issues of Pakistan? Putting aside previous political vendettas, that's the question.
They must do, but what happens, Sana, is even on the smaller constituencies of Pakistan, people are forced to each other. They have that enemyship against each other, that somebody on the top from the government, they have to look after their constituent, and they have to look after the candidate who has either won from that constituency or has lost, but still requires help from the center or from the provincial government to fix their opponents there, to make sure that they have their social survival in that candidacy, so that in the coming future elections they can be facilitated and they can go for the election with ease. This is what takes place. And even, I mean, we have examples that just before the government left, they started handing over cash to so many candidates in different constituencies to make sure that they are finishing the works going on in their constituencies, so that they can go for asking for votes from the voters.
Which government? Every government, or
no, not every. The last government, and yes, even previously as well. In
PTI also.
Yeah, in every government it takes place.
Thank you.
Why they do it? They only do it just because of one reason, that the animosity is not only on the top level, it is even on the grassroots level. And our political structure actually needs to get out of it now. They have to have a thought that is a nationalistic thought, rather than just catering their brotherries or catering their constituencies or catering their clan. We need to get out of it. We need to think big. We need to think big about our country. We are not a small country with a small population. We are a huge country, and even there are certain cities of Pakistan who have more population than few of the European countries, for God's sake.
Even then, of course, every country's elections are important. Right, but there's something that you said that I want to explore further, especially with regards to the kind of enemyship that you have claimed that parties put forward prior to the elections. And that's important, considering that, of course, we can sit here and talk about how that's part of politics, and we understand that there are no real enemies or friends. But does the general public also understand that with the kind of rhetoric that is being put in place by different political parties very strongly against other political parties and candidates, that is there a sense of betrayal then if there is collaboration between different political forces post-elections?
That happened. Why do you think People's Party lost its ground in Punjab? It was essentially during General Pervez Musharraf's time, when they actually came to power, they formed a coalition. And for a little while, every People's Party worker started saying, look, these people used to attack each other. Nawaz Sharif is the worst enemy who made life impossible for Bibi when she was alive, right? Why are we sitting with them? So they started fleeing, and this happens, right? But remember, tribalism was thought to be something innate in human nature. And then recently I have read a study in an advanced psychology journal that tribalism is not innate, it is a learned behavior. So you can curtail it. You don't need to essentially start attacking the other side, you can work together as well. But look, in UK, even in the US minus Trump, whenever politics was there, nobody would resort to violence, right? Once BBC people were actually giving us some kind of workshop, and in that they showed, look, this guy was so abusive on television, and trust me, compared to our or Indian channels, it was like the other person was pelting the other one with rose petals, right? It was so soft and gentle. So I think that evolution takes time, but it will have an impact. Regarding something else that was mentioned, and Faisal mentioned that, and that is use of money in constituencies. Essentially, when a government actually doles out development fund, remember that Pakistan is supposed to have 3 tiers of government. A lawmaker's job is not to develop his constituency. His is to only make laws or to actually either be part of the treasury benches or then have an oversight mechanism. Right?
Local government.
There is a third one, that is local government. Local government is supposed to do this.
Yeah.
Who started this bad business? It was General Ziaul Haq. When he thought that even his non-party elections cannot actually help, so he started actually doling out development funds to these people, because through them they could actually manipulate the fault lines of each constituency.
Absolutely.
Right? This has to stop. You have to start developing local government. And who do you need to engage? Every time I talk about grand debate and grand national debate, I mention repeatedly that the bureaucracy also has to be brought in. 99% of times it is bureaucracy that is running the show. General Musharraf could not do anything had there not been a Tariq Aziz as his secretary, right? After that, before that also, Mia Nawaz Sharif, today, even Fawad Hassan Fawad is even right now is part of the Qatar cabinet. And he is thought to be the man who single-handedly kept on doing whatever he could for the Nawaz government in between 2013 and 18. So with all those dynamics, you'll have to bring in the bureaucracy to sensitize them, to convince them that in the end, it is your country. And today your DPOs or your DCOs might lose power. But if you fix this system, tomorrow your young men can enter into politics also. And they can be local Nazims instead of being DPO or DCO, right? That is something that you'll have to actually fix eventually. But this habit of bribing MNAs with the public funds, and those funds then are spent on building roads which lead to nowhere. I mean, for example, if you, there's former Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani. I don't know whether you have visited Multan. You know, when he was speaker, I complained in a column that the road outside his house was not developed, right? So when he became prime minister, what happened was, when you enter Multan, you start with one flyover, second flyover, third flyover, fourth flyover. Then comes Gilani House, and then there's no flyover.
Oh, really?
Right?
Wow.
So that becomes a joke.
Yeah.
If you want to serve people, not actually use these development, the moolah for just personal gratification or gratification only of your supporters. So that is important.
Yes, and
Absolutely.
just a one-liner.
Yes.
You know, the aspect of local body government. I mean, which country we mostly follow when it comes to our, democratic systems, and the democratic norms we follow are from Britain. And I can give you a series of examples in which people who eventually became prime minister of that country, Great Britain, they actually started their politics from the local body elections.
And this is, of course, important. And
Boris Johnson actually was.
And I want Muneeb's opinion on that as well, given the fact that, of course, this is something that we keep coming back to, how important it is to have local governments in place. But again, unfortunately, we haven't really seen that happening previously as well, and political parties have repeatedly been unable to actually implement that. And I'd like your perspective on that as well. But add to that, especially in terms of what we are talking about initially, of the elections being an opportunity to a fresh start, to a change, what it is that change is the public actually looking for, and does it really hope for that change out of these elections, and is not dismissive of the fact that this is going to result in something they've seen before?
So actually, both the questions that you've asked, my response to them both is interlinked. As far as local forms of government are concerned, I believe that the manifestos of the mainstream political parties, and even the ones which are not that mainstream, are to be looked at, and there is an emphasis on that. For example, the PMLN's manifesto, and I went through it, it's a very detailed one, and it does mention exactly that. And I'm also seeing a lot of grassroots political movements for the first time gaining traction in an audience of their own, in public support of their own. For example, Huquq-e-Khalq Party, led by Dr. Amar Ali Jan, Jibran Nasir, very progressive individuals who have new ideas which have hitherto been quite, I think, sidelined in the mainstream. Those are coming forward, and they have emphasized a lot on local forms of government. The second question that you asked, that what is it that the public wants? Again, to the public, I would say just be aware of the manifestos of each of the political parties, and then decide which of them, match your ideology the most. Which of them do you think are the best, or at least the least harmful, if you are to apply a very minimum criteria? And I think that, speaking of myself, and I hope that many other fellow Pakistanis would also echo the same sentiments. What I would want at this stage is that we need to be focusing on overcoming the, I think, problems, the issues which have been holding us back, and how they've made us almost beholden to the international community, getting rid of IMF, being able to stand on our own feet. And I think that can only be attained if there's social cohesion, which means that we need to root out terrorism, we need to root out extremism, and we need to root out division and hatred from our society. And that in its turn is dependent on bringing in political stability. Of course, something momentous had happened in April 2022 when a vote of no confidence had taken place, whereby constitutionally a prime minister had been removed from his job. And that, in a way, was a victory for democratic values. But after that, given the fact that social media can be used a lot for disinformation, street power can be misused, and that was misused. We saw that on 9th May as well. There had been political upheaval as well, but now there has been relatively some stability and some calm. And what we need to overcome right now is terrorism issues. But because all of these things are interlinked. Your economic issues, your development issues, your political, social issues. So I think that what people right now want is that whichever government comes into power now puts the economy back on track, creates more jobs, and focuses on delivering things which have practical value rather than engaging in culture wars.
Whenever we talk about what is important for Pakistan or what is necessary for Pakistan's progress is change. But I want to understand is when we say change, what is that change, and what is it the change from, or who?
like I said, from this hate mongering, this culture of mudslinging, which has become so mainstream in politics that it has spilled over to people. I mean, people have such strong opinions on the political parties that they support that they are fighting against one another. So this needs to, I think, like I've said, temperatures need to be calmed down on that front so that any government which comes into power can then be held accountable on, whether they are delivering on the promises that they made in the manifestos. Because, I mean, from my point of view, when I looked at the manifestos of PMLN, of Pakistan People's Party, or even PTI, other than the fact that PTI wants to reduce the term of National Assembly to 4 years, I don't have much of a disagreement with what they're saying on paper. But the problem is that you have to translate what you're saying in your manifesto from theory into practice. Would you be able to do that? We don't want to listen to our politicians engaging in culture wars, creating false panic alarms, but they should actually be showing some concrete action and delivering results. Your statistics need to show, they need to be doing the talking. How much more jobs you've created? What actions have you taken in ensuring that Pakistan's diplomatic relations are improved, international relations are improved, more jobs are created, and terrorism is reduced? Because all of these things, like I've been saying, are interlinked, and the change people want is they want to be able to live with dignity, have access to justice, have access to the most basic of civil, political, economic, social rights. And that's not much to ask for.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Muneeb, Qadir, for joining us and being a part of the discussion as always. Yes, Farrukh.
Yeah,
you wanted to add something?
your question was great. So I wanted to answer that. One thing is for sure. Pakistan's population has been growing like wildfire. And what happens then is that you start feeling absence of governance, right? Government is there, but it is always too inaccessible, right? And there's a very interesting saying in Africa. They talk about an Article 15, that no matter which constitution comes, Article 15 stays. And what is that? Fend for yourself, right? So government is not going to be bothered. You have to survive no matter what. So right now, the change that the people want is the presence of government, not big brother, not any abusive or coercive government, but the government who is there to solve their problems. And I'm not saying socialist, model, a government which has some regulatory reach where they can actually help you out.
And is that so hard?
It is very hard because Pakistan is a post-colonial country, and Pakistan hasn't actually gone for any major reform since its independence. India went for land reform immediately after their freedom. Bangladesh went for their land reform immediately after separating from us. We were not able to do it. And that was one aspect. We have been talking about bureaucracy reform. We have been talking about law reform, criminal justice reform, right? CRPC and penal code as well. They have, do you know how old are they? More than 100-year-old, right? If we are incapable of writing such basic laws, and we have to inherit everything from the colonial rule, then someday people are going to ask, have the foreigners left? Is the colonialism over? If the local government is always going to be run by an unelected person who is actually deputed from another city, then are they not going to ask whether he is the viceroy or somebody else, right? So you'll have to start focusing on these issues, but you have to have a very serious debate. I'm hoping whosoever comes to power, now that I think PTI is also learning the virtues of flexibility, and the other two have already learned something. I think that there can be a serious dialogue, but bring everyone in. Judiciary, army, law enforcement agencies, your bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is all tiers, right? Why do we need grade 21 or 22? Why do we need federal pool, right? All these questions are important. Somebody has to debate that, right?
Yeah.
So if that can be done, I think there's a possibility that we may reach somewhere.
And that's great that there is a possibility, at least, of that happening. But last questions from both of you. What's the hope for tomorrow? Faisal, I'll start with you.
Well, the hope for the tomorrow is that if it is a turnout, it is enormous, then that would be unprecedented result. I mean, we are seeing, and so many analysts are obviously claiming as well, that if Suhail Badaij, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I was earlier discussing with
No,
Farrukh.
I saw that as well.
You know, before every program, me and Farrukh, we have a detailed discussion, and in that, obviously, we talk about everything.
No, but
and
we also watch television. So if Suhail Badaij is saying something, he's saying it on television. We are watching that as well, right?
So
Yes.
what it is being claimed is that if the turnout, the voter turnout on the day tomorrow is more than 60%, then it would be a shocking result for everyone.
Right.
So I don't know whether he was hoping for something or whether he was just talking about what
Yeah.
he. Look, Badaij Sahab, I think that there are 4 or 5 people who understand
Yeah.
Pakistan's politics, right? Nusra Javed, Suhail Badaij, Iftikhar Ahmed, and a few youngsters as well. They
Habib
have-
Akram.
Habib Akram
Yeah.
also, but he became partisan, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't judge him, but I think that it was to his disadvantage because he became very sentimental. But in the end, my humble submission is I want the turnout to be somewhere around 70–80%,
Okay.
so that trainers like these can learn that nothing changes.
All right, and we hope that that's not true, but of course the big day is going to be tomorrow, and of course we all hope that everybody does come out and vote, and this of course is a democratic right of every citizen of Pakistan, and we hope that they exercise it and choose their future tomorrow and are able to do so wisely, and we really hope that there is no untoward situation tomorrow as well. Of course, security is full in place, all measures are there for the protection of the people, for them to be able to go out and vote, and so we'll be back tomorrow now with discussions as to what is going on, and we hope that the best party wins. That's all that we have from the transmission now. We'll see you tomorrow.